Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. This is the final day before Giro d'Italia starts proper in 2025. That means it's a preview, of course, for Stage 1. Stage 1 looks pretty exciting when we look at the profile because, of course, we're talking about the same Category 3 here, so they get to see it twice. And we're talking 7 kilometers long at 4.5%, but with 8% sections in the climb. So that means that the sprinters, the pure sprinters, when you're talking about the Caden Groves out there, when you're talking about the Sam Bennett's out there, well, that means that Caden Groves going to maybe possibly make it over, but the pure sprinters like Sam Bennett from AG2R, he ain't going to make it tomorrow. It's going to be too hard. Okay, it's Stage 1 of the Giro, so everyone knows the pink jersey's on tap. If you guys followed Beyond the Coverage yesterday, I talked about Wout van Aert, Visma bike controlling a lot of the early parts of the first week here of the Giro d'Italia, and certainly on Stage 1, I thought that Visma bike would be super motivated with Wout van Aert. And then while we were uploading our video, Wout van Aert came out with his video saying that he was sick and that he's hoping to get better here at the Giro d'Italia, but he doesn't know how it's going to be. Okay, if we go back into the classic seasons with Wout van Aert, we wouldn't call it a success. Mainly not because he got 4th at Amstel Gold and because he went top 5s, of course, at Paris-Roubaix, but mainly because he was never in the fight for the victories. Even at Paris-Roubaix, he was behind the 8 ball and climbing his way back up to the front, so Wout van Aert still finished the top 5 at Paris-Roubaix, but he was never battling for the victories. Now, when we get here into Stage 1 and he's been sick, well, we have to wait and see if he gets better. But we do not have to change the plans too much from what I told you guys yesterday, because instead of Wout van Aert and Visma bike controlling the race, let's just plug in Mads Pedersen and Lidl-Trek. Because we know Trek for certain is not afraid to ride the front. I mean, they ride the front with Tadej Pogacar at Liège-Bastogne-Liège. This is a knucklehead move, but they did it. At Flèche Wallonne, they did it, and they did it for Skilmos there because, of course, he went for a shot and took the victory at Amstel Gold. But that was a different way to win there once he was falling on the coattails there of Remco Evenepoel and they caught Tadej Pogacar. And there was a bike throw at the line where Skilmos from Lidl-Trek won Amstel Gold. Amstel Gold, you know I love Amstel Gold. It's the 6th monument, at least up here on the Beyond the Coverage. But when we're talking about Stage 1, instead of Wout van Aert, if he really is sick and not feeling good and needs to find his legs and bring him back up here to Giro d'Italia, once you plug in Mads Pedersen, which is almost the same kind of rider as Wout van Aert, really. I mean, unless Wout van Aert's on exceptionally good form and first-page rider form, then no one can touch the big guy from Visma bike. But Mads Pedersen is a great substitute, and Lidl-Trek is a great substitute for Visma bike. So when we're watching Stage 1 of the 25 Giro d'Italia tomorrow, you could be sure that after the tack finally goes up the road on that first half of the flat part of the Stage 1, that once we get into the Category 1 climb, Lidl-Trek should be setting some tempo up that climb if Visma bike truly believe that Wout van Aert's off on form. So Mads Pedersen gets thrown in the role of trying to win the pink jersey, which I'm sure he was already thinking that anyways and saying, well, we were going to ride with Visma bike. So now if Wout really is sick and Visma bike don't ride in the front, Lidl-Trek's going to have less help. But they're going to be motivated, of course, to try to get the pink jersey for Mads Pedersen. And if we rewind the film all the way to Paris-Nice, we can see on that final stage, finishing up Col d'Ez, that fantastic stage of the 25 edition of Paris-Nice, that Mads Pedersen can climb. He made it up over the first 2 climbs, stole some green points jersey points along the way there, and of course was able to secure the point sprint competition there at Paris-Nice because he's got some climbing legs. So it's not far-fetched at all to see that Lidl-Trek's going to do a whole ton of work tomorrow in Stage 1. But what does it mean for the pure sprinters like Sam Bennett? Well, they're going to have to wait. They're going to have to wait for Stage 1 to pass. They're going to have to wait for Stage 2 to pass the individual time trial. Then they're going to have to start going for stage victories in the field sprints later on when we get deeper here into the Giro d'Italia starting proper. So when we go back over Lidl-Trek, what they have to keep in mind, because Mads Pedersen has made this mistake before, is when we start looking at those 2 final Category 3 climbs, remember, you get to the summit of the first one, you got about 10, 15 kilometers at the most before you get back to the bottom again. You have to start back up it, and then you have 15 kilometers from the top of the final Category 3 climb all the way into the finish. So Mads Pedersen has to remember that he needs some teammates. So if they don't have teammates in the breakaway and then some other team was forced to chase, and then it's just Trek chasing because they missed the breakaway, which I would assume they won't practice on trying to get someone in the break, they're going to go for Mads Pedersen. So at the top of that category 3, Mads Pedersen has to remember that he's got 15 kilometers of descending and into the final sprint before he gets a chance of wearing the pink jersey. So you do not want to be isolated at the top of the category 3. Now he has Ciccone, who's racing for general classification for Lidl-Trek. So there should be no way that he's isolated, but you got to start asking yourself, will Ciccone be willing to ride for Mads Pedersen on stage 1? I believe he should. If the opportunity is there, it's a better chance of taking the pink jersey and winning stage 1 with Mads, especially if Wout's not in the picture anymore. And there's no other real speed left in that out of the sprinters in that front group, because I can imagine that there's 30, 45 guys coming over that category 3, and Mads Pedersen may be the fastest guy if Wout van Aert really is dropped early on tomorrow's stage 1. That means we start looking at the other pure sprinters. Guys, the other pure sprinters, Caden Groves might make it over with Mads Pedersen, but I think Mads climbs a little bit better than Caden Groves. So if the pace is fast enough, they can get rid of all the pure sprinters, which means that Lidl-Trek, they'll still have to get Mads from the top down the descent. So will Ciccone start pulling for Mads Pedersen? Keep an eye on that. Now, when we start looking over Lidl-Trek team, when we start looking at some of their sprinters, they have Jacopo Musca, and he should be drop working early because he shouldn't have those kind of legs to make it over. Same with Dan Uhl. He should be suffering. So what would normally be the lead out guys for Mads Pedersen when we're getting into field sprints, those guys should be dropped off, but he does have one ace card in Matej Vácek. Vácek can climb, and Vácek can do sprints, and Vácek can do lead outs. Then we look over at Søren Kragh Andersen, who Lidl-Trek have signed from Alpecin Deceuninck last season. This could be an ace signing for tomorrow's stage 1 for Mads Pedersen, because when we start looking at Søren Kragh Andersen, he should be able to climb somewhat near the level there of Mads Pedersen, but he should also be able to be a good lead-out guy to control the peloton coming into the finish of tomorrow's stage 1 and dropping off Matej Vácek with Mads Pedersen sitting on his wheel to try to be able to win that stage 1. Now, if Mads Pedersen wins stage 1, he'll have the pink jersey and he'll have a stage win already here at the Giro d'Italia. One other thing to keep in mind that's off of script here from the Giro d'Italia, but still related to Mads Pedersen. He doesn't have a contract for next year. Okay, that's big news. Now, when we're sitting on the Chesterfield, Garrett said, well, of course they're going to sign him for next year. Well, of course will they sign Mads Pedersen for next year? Because if Mads Pedersen was surely going to be signed, he'd be going to the Tour de France, not the Giro d'Italia. But Lidl-Trek have Johnny Milan, their sprinter, going over to the Tour de France, and Mads Pedersen's doing the Giro d'Italia. I can't tell you who, if he wanted to do it, but I can't imagine that Mads Pedersen would want to skip out on the Tour de France for the Giro d'Italia, which means that he could be looking for teams to sign with. Now, I've brought it up on Beyond the Coverage and Butterfly Effect episodes many times that I think UAE Team Emirates, assuming they have any budget left, which, you know, they're UAE Team Emirates, so they probably can find a budget, they need to sign Mads Pedersen because that is the one rider that Tadej Pogačar is missing over there at UAE Team Emirates. They do not have a Wout-type rider, and if they could get Mads Pedersen signed over there at UAE Team Emirates, oh man, Tadej Pogačar would have help all over the place on the flats, the crosswinds, and when he starts going over to the classics like Tour of Flanders and maybe even another run at Paris-Roubaix. Of course, Mads Pedersen wants to win his own Paris-Roubaix too, but maybe with the right salary and the right contract sitting over there with Mads Pedersen, Tadej Pogačar could get him over there to UAE Team Emirates and help him to try to wrap up Milan-San Remo victory. Could help him wrap up, talking about Paris-Roubaix victory, could help him wrap up another Tour of Flanders victory. So that'd be a big signing over there for UAE Team Emirates. And right now, Lidl-Trek certainly do not have an endless budget, so that might be why they're waiting. And we see that Mads Pedersen still doesn't have a contract. And with Johnny Milan winning so big and becoming one of the more prolific sprinters in the European peloton right now and going to the Tour de France, taking Mads Pedersen's spot, Mads Pedersen might not be 100% happy right now. And even when you look at Lidl-Trek, it's not like they're bringing these massive lead-out guys here for Mads Pedersen to win at the Giro. Simone Canzone's not here. Ed Toons is not here. And those are his main guys that do massive lead-outs at the end of field sprints for Mads Pedersen. So it's an interesting scenario here for tomorrow's stage 1 with Wout van Aert being out because of sickness, or maybe being slowed because of sickness, might be the more precise word to use. But either way, take a look at Lidl-Trek when they're on the front, because Mads Pedersen's contract's up, so he's going to want to win for sure. And tomorrow's a good stage. I don't think we'll see the GC guys really attacking hard up to Category 3, because when you look at the real GC players here, Primoz Roglic, Juan Ayuso, Adam Yates, Simon Yates, and I'm going to throw in Mikel Landis' name in there in terms of the top 5 favorites here at the Giro d'Italia. We start going outside of the top 5. Of course, it's Ciccone from Lidl-Trek, but he's not going to be attacking because, well, like I said, Mads Pedersen's his teammate, so he's not going to be attacking. He might even be on the front for a little bit at the final in the last 15K for Mads Pedersen. But when we start looking at other guys, they're going to be a little bit too scared to do some work on stage 1. It'd have to be real far back guys that maybe are hoping to go top 15 and maybe a top 10 at the Giro d'Italia on GC to really throw in attacks on the Category 3. Otherwise, it should be one for a small field sprint, which means Mads Pedersen and possibly Wout van Aert, depending on how sick he is. Should be an exciting race, but keep an eye on the details there, and let's see what Lidl-Trek look like if they can hold their team all together going over the Category 3, or if Mads Pedersen's going to be isolated with only help from Ciccone when they get to the top of that Category 3, and then will Ciccone sell out for Mads Pedersen? Because if the management over there at Lidl-Trek have told Ciccone that you're our main guy here at the Giro d'Italia and have already started to believe that Mads Pedersen is a rider they might not be capable of signing for next season and the seasons beyond, they might already be telling Ciccone, you're our 100% focus here at the Giro d'Italia, and Mads isn't. I know they do that over there because I rode for Radio Shack in 2013 when I won the Vuelta a España, and the team then was certainly more looking after Fabian Cancellara than they were looking after me while I was wearing the race leader's red jersey. And if you don't believe me, just go watch stage 4 of the Vuelta a España, and that'll tell you who the team was working for, even though I was wearing the race leader's red jersey. So like and subscribe. Stage 1's getting ready to start. The butterfly effect, of course, is going to cover it. I'll see you guys on the next video real soon.